Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into the absolutely wild origin stories of two companies that, let's be honest, completely rewired how we all travel and live, Uber and Airbnb. Can you believe that? This is what a legendary Silicon Valley investor actually told the founders of Airbnb. And get this, it wasn't an insult. It was the highest possible compliment about their sheer unbelievable resilience when they were right on the edge of total failure. And that resilience, that's really at the heart of this entire story. Okay, so let's dive right in, because these two world-changing ideas, they didn't come from the same place at all, not even close. One was basically born from desperation, and the other, pure ambition. So on one side, you've got Airbnb. It started simply because two designers couldn't make rent. Their whole goal was about connection, about community. Then, on the other side, you've got Uber, sparked by an engineer's frustration with San Francisco's awful taxi service. Their goal was all about raw efficiency. Two totally different mindsets, and both were about to change everything. For Airbnb's founders, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, this was not some grand vision at the beginning. I mean, a huge design conference was coming to town, all the hotels were sold out, and they just happened to have some air mattresses. So their idea was super simple. Let's rent out some floor space to other designers and make a little cash. That's it. It was just a side project to pay the bills.
Now, the origin of Uber, that is a story in itself. Co-founder Garrett Camp was at a conference in Paris. He just watched James Bond track a car's location on a smartphone in Casino Royale, and he just got obsessed with this idea of pushing a button and having a car magically appear. It was this vision of a sleek, frictionless, kind of futuristic luxury service.
But here's the thing. Before they became these giants we know today, both of these companies nearly died. They fell deep into what Silicon Valley grimly calls the Trough of Sorrow. And this is the real make-or-break period for any startup. You know, the initial hype is gone, the money's running out, and it feels like nobody cares about your big idea. This is the startup graveyard. This is where most of them go to die.
Airbnb's founders were completely broke. Their website was a ghost town. So what did they do? Well, during the 2008 election, they designed and sold their own limited edition breakfast cereals, Obama O's and Cap'n McCain's. I'm not kidding. It was a desperate, brilliant, and honestly a totally bizarre move that got them just enough cash to stay alive, and way more importantly, it got them noticed.
Uber, meanwhile, was having its own kind of nightmare. Investors just didn't get it. They're like, why would anyone get in a stranger's car? Then, just a few months after launching as Uber Cab, San Francisco regulators slammed them with a cease and desist order, basically calling them an illegal taxi service. I mean, their future looked incredibly bleak.
So, how did these survivors, these cockroaches that just wouldn't die, engineer their insane, explosive growth? Well, they developed these playbooks that really could not have been more different from each other.
Airbnb had that classic chicken and egg problem, right? You can't get guests without hosts, but you can't get hosts without guests. So their solution was a stroke of absolute genius, though maybe ethically a little gray. They built a program that made it super easy for their hosts to also post their listings on Craigslist, a site with millions of users. It was like they built a secret backdoor into their biggest competitor's house. And oh man, it works spectacularly.
Uber's strategy was way less about a single clever hack and a lot more about brute force and repetition. They developed what became famous as the playbook, a literal step-by-step guide to conquer a new city. It was this ruthlessly efficient blueprint for expansion that they could just copy and paste over and over again.
And you can see the results of that playbook right here. It was unbelievably effective. They launched in San Francisco in June 2010. Less than a year later, bam, they're in New York. By the end of that same year, they're international, launching in Paris. It took them less than 2 years to go from just one city to spreading like wildfire across the entire continent. They weren't just growing, they were on a global blitz.
So this kind of hypergrowth meant they weren't just scrappy underdogs anymore. Oh no. They were now major threats to some really powerful, entrenched industries. And the fight was officially on.
And you know, from the perspective of city officials, you can kind of see their point. These companies were just ignoring decades of laws designed for public safety and fair competition. To the regulators, Uber and Airbnb weren't innovators, they were just straight-up illegal operators.
But Uber's co-founder, Travis Kalanick, he saw it completely differently. His response to all these fights was just pure defiance. He framed every single regulatory battle as a fight for the future against a corrupt and broken past. And that was a really compelling story that got users to rally to their side.
Now, Airbnb tried to play nicer. Their whole strategy was to be a good partner to cities. But they still walked right into a buzzsaw, especially in New York City. The legal landscape was just hostile, and officials were so skeptical, one even told their lawyer she must be smoking pot. So, despite that softer touch, they still found themselves tangled up in a decade-long war.
So, after all the chaos, the growth, the battles, what is the permanent mark that these two upstarts have actually left on our world?
The numbers are just staggering. By 2016, Uber's valuation had exploded to $68 billion. Just let that sink in. This was a company that didn't even exist a decade earlier and had been nearly shut down by regulators. Its insane valuation signaled a new reality. A powerful tech idea, when you combine it with ruthless execution, could flip entire industries upside down and create immense value at a speed nobody had ever seen before. That's why it mattered. It changed the rules of the game.
But their legacy is incredibly complicated. It's a true double-edged sword. I mean, on one hand, yes, they absolutely created flexible work for millions of people and made services way more accessible. But on the other hand, they are at the center of these huge controversies, from endless debates over worker rights and their impact on affordable housing, to major PR nightmares like Uber's infamous God View tool that could track users. In the end, even Travis Kalanick, the ultimate wartime CEO, had to admit that their aggressive, bull-in-a-china shop approach caused some real collateral damage. The hustle that was their antidote, well, it turned out to be a bit of a poison too. And that leaves us with this final big thought. These companies, they undeniably built a version of the future. But their story really forces us to ask, in that relentless pursuit of innovation, how much of the present is it okay to break along the way?